Alright, so, this is a fanfiction idea that was voted on over on Patreon. Thank you all for voting on that one. And as always, if you'd like to be part of those Patreon polls, we'll check out episode and movie reviews. Just hit the link in the description box below. Head on over to my Patreon, hit the first tier. That'll allow you access to do so. But other than that, let's get started. So, this one won by a country mile, and I basically asked for a Crow crossover. Not with the 2024 Crow, I'm talking like, 1994 Crow. The only Crow we care about. So, that's what we're doing here. And this one, like I said, won by a country mile, a Spawn Crow crossover. Something that could actually, happen, but knowing McFarlane, that's never going to happen, because, God forbid, Todd McFarlane play nice with anyone if he doesn't get a toy deal out of it. I'm just saying. Anyway, so yeah, a Spawn Crow crossover. I don't know where the comic rights for the Crow are. I believe they're at, last I checked, they're at IDW, but I could be wrong. So, imagine this is an Image IDW crossover we may never get. Anyway, let's get started with the story. So the story in question actually begins with Eric waking up in his grave, pulling himself out of his grave, and it's painful this time. It's actually it wasn't like before where it was holy shit, that just happened, where am I? Here, yeah. In this case, however, he pulls himself out of the grave, and it's painful, and there's he feels every part of his body is just in agony, and he sees the Crow, and he's like, "Why did you bring me back? I did everything. I did everything that was asked of me. I got my why did you bring me back?" Because he's all confused, and the Crow's just flies away, and he's like, okay, here we go again. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Spawn is in the alley, and he's just brooding and all that, wallowing in his crapulence, and he's basically his brooding is what he calls thinking. So he's sitting in his chair, just kind of brooding, but he's thinking about the series of graves that have been disturbed. These graves have been disturbed in the sense that something crawled out of there. The bodies were exhumed, but it looked more like the bodies just kind of crawled out of the dirt. And he's been trying to find where these dead bodies are going, but he's had no success in finding any of them, and it's starting to piss him off. So, because it's Al Simmons, he doesn't think with his head, he thinks with his gun. So Spawn is, Simmons is just kind of sitting on the, sitting, and then he's like, fuck this, I'm going out. So he proceeds to leave and go back to the cemetery. Meanwhile, Eric is, got some clothes, he's got the makeup back on, and he also reads a newspaper that's conveniently left for him by the Crow. So he looks at it, he's reading through it, and he's like, mysterious bodies dug up in cemetery. Ah, now I see what this is about. So Eric goes to the graveyard. Meanwhile, Eric gets there, and he's just kind of overlooking where the bodies were, and he even sees bodies starting to move out. Every night, more bodies pull themselves out of the graves. So the dead start pulling themselves out, and they're screaming in pain, and he's just holy shit, that's new. So Eric proceeds to fight the dead, but he's also because at first he's like, hang on, I know, I'm like you, I'm dead too, so let me, what did this to you? Because he's not immediately holy shit, I'm gonna go fight this thing. It's more this guy is in pain like I was, and he just wants rest. So he tries to talk to him, but the thing is just so overwhelmed with agony, it attacks him. So Eric has to fight them and to put them down. And in the middle of the fight, he starts getting wrapped up in chains, and he's like, uh-oh, here we go. Gets yanked, and here comes Spawn. And Spawn is just ain't this funny? I come here to I come to look for clues on the what's bringing these people back from the dead, and I find your spooky ass. And he's like, well, takes one to know one, but hi, I'm Eric. I have no part in this. And Simmons is just, and Al's just like, whatever. It just throws him into a headstone. It breaks, and Simmons is all like, "You think I don't? You think I don't know what you are? I can sense death all over you. You ain't human, and you're gonna give me some answers." And Eric's like, "I could say the same about you. You clearly reek of death. So, I guess it really does take one to know one." So Spawn and Eric fight, as they would in a comic, but it's very clear Spawn is, it's Spawn, and Eric, while he is strong, while he's given, like, unique abilities, the supernatural powers that Spawn has at his disposal actually can hurt Eric, and it actually leads to him being like, "Time out! I'm not who if you would think for a second, I'd be happy to help you." And Spawn's like, "Fine, you can talk, but but talk fast while you still got a jaw, punk." And he's like, "God, why do you talk like a 90s villain? Or like a 90s edgelord?" So Eric explains that, like, I was brought back once to avenge my death and the death of the one I loved, and I went back into the ground to for eternal rest and be with Shelley in the afterlife. But the Crow brought me back. Like, the Crow brought me back, and it's clear that the dead aren't dying. So we need to. So I take it you're looking for the same thing. How about you and me work together? Like, and Spawn's just like, "I don't do team ups," and he's like, "Well, first time for everything." So, and he's just like, "You just shut up and follow my lead." So after more zombies start awakening from their graves in several other graveyards across the city. And they're all just kind of like, Spawn and Eric and Al are like trying to still figure out like what exactly is going on. But as they're they take one of the dead, because Eric suggests, "How about we take one of the dead back to somewhere we can like ask questions?" And he's like, "You want to ask questions from a dead man?" And he's like, "You're talking to one, aren't you?" So Al and Eric take one of the zombies and bring them back to Al's alleyway. And Eric is like, "I'll talk to him." And the two, like, the zombies just like, all I saw was a green light. And Spawn's like, "Green light? What did you see?" And so the zombie basically explains that what he was going towards the light. He was in heaven, and then a green light enveloped him, and it brought him back down here. And he's like, "There ain't a lot of beings that can do that, but I do know, I am aware that someone could have that same kind of power." So eventually, like, Spawn suggests that, like, this has to be the work of someone like me. So they have to go. They decide to go back into the graveyard to find to find any other trace. But as they depart, Eric's like, "You're undead too, and I got a feeling that you made a deal with something that didn't sit well with your corpse." And he's like, "Yeah, I made a deal with a demon named Malbolgia, and he's like, "Did you do it for love?" And he goes, "Of course I did. I wanted to see my wife Wanda again." And he's like, "And is she still alive?" "Yeah." He's like, "Sucks to be you, man. Like, the love of my life, my fiancée Shelley was raped and murdered right in front of me, and I had to avenge her death, and now we're together in the afterlife." And Spawn's just like, "Ain't you lucky? I don't get, I have to live in pain and agony and, suffering while my wife is with another man. My wife." And Eric is just like, "Something tells me you don't really love your wife. You just love the idea of being with her again and having control over her." And Spawn's just like, "Fuck you." So the two return, and now it's just a full-on madhouse. There's just armies of zombies rising from the grave. And among them, Eric is like, "Oh, fuck off." Because one of the zombies leading them is Top Dollar. Yeah, Top Dollar's zombie body is back from the dead, and the person behind it all was Violator, Violator basically made a deal with Top Dollar years ago before he was killed by Eric. Basically, like, Top Dollar made a deal with Violator to get his soul and also teach him, like, a bit of the occult, like his sister. So, when Top Dollar died, his soul went to hell, where he learned further from other demons and necromancers that were in hell, and now wants to bring an army of the dead with him. So, not only has Top Dollar brought them back, but he's also brought back all of his henchmen, Funboy, Funboy, Knives, all of them. And they're like, well, ain't this some shit? Hello there, Eric. This time, I get to kill you. I get to put you in the ground. And you brought a friend. And, of course, Violator's there, and he's just like, hi, Crispy. You like my new buddy? So Spawn and Eric go in and proceed to just fight their way through the dead. And Top Dollar's trying to get at Eric, but Spawn uses his chains, just wraps him up, and he's just like, "Come here, motherfucker! You fought Eric before, but you've never fought me." And he's like, "I don't care about you, you hell Spawn. This ain't got shit to do with you." And Spawn's like, "You messed with the dead. You disturbed the line between the living and the dead. It matters to me." And Violator, who's in the middle of fighting Eric, is like, "Damn, hypocrite much?" Anyway, so what's your name, Spooky? And that's when Eric just takes like a knife and just jams it into Violator's eye, and he's just like, "Ah, you motherfucker!" So, Violator, he's just like, "Ah, shit." But I know what you guys are. You're not the first crow I've encountered. All I gotta do is kill that crow, and you're done. So he's reaching for it, and Eric takes like a headstone, like a whole cross, grabs it and jams it into Violator's just mouth. Proceeds to then kick it and make Violator start choking on it. Meanwhile, Top Dollar gets fucking destroyed by Spawn, and thereby the dead return to their graves, finally. So by the end of it, Eric's job is now done, and Al's just like, now you can go back to Shelly and go have peace. And he's like, yeah, that's something I'm sorry to say you'll never get, Al. And he's like, whatever, it's my pain. And he's like, spoken like a true edgelord. Later, so Eric returns to the land of the dead, and Spawn goes back to being broody. Anyway, so there you go, guys. That is the Spawn Crow crossover. I want to thank everyone for voting on this. Other than that, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.